so my name's Giles Sirett. I'm the chairman of the CloudStack User Group. For those of you who haven't been to the European User Group before, this is just the objectives of what this group's about. This is an informal group. It's a collaborative environment focused around Apache CloudStack. So most people who attend this group are a user, a developer, or from an organization that uses Apache CloudStack. It's pretty informal. We meet quarterly at somewhere in Europe, often in London, because a lot of us are based in London, but we often go off to other places. And we have talks, technical deep dives, issues, best practice, case studies, user stories, people doing exciting things with CloudStack. And then also importantly, we have often talks from vendors who've got related technology that we think is interesting in the CloudStack world. Okay, there's no official membership database for this group. There's a LinkedIn group called the CloudStack European User Group where things get posted in terms of when the next events are going to be and that sort of thing. Before we go on, just want to say a really big thank you to ShapeBlue, which is actually the company I work for. Mike and the guys at Ticketmaster and the guys at Computer Centre are going to buy us all some drinks tonight. So can everybody give the sponsors a round of applause, please?
Design consultancy, because they're all the same colours.
There's something sort of related. Okay, so the agenda today, I'm just going to do a few sort of notices and things, just tell you what's going on briefly, been going on briefly in the CloudStack world for the last few months. Our first speaker is the barman stroke AV man stroke first aider is Mike. He's going to talk about how Ticketmaster have deployed CloudStack and what they're doing with it. Bobby has flown in from Sofia, is talking about a whole set of new features, and is it fair enough to say sort of set of random features that you've highlighted that you think are quite interesting in some of the latest versions. We'll then grab a break. We'll be fluid around the break time depending on how the talks go. Guido is over from the Netherlands. He's going to be talking about some of the stuff he's been doing with VXLAN and IPv6. Gregoire isn't here yet. Gregoire is on the Eurostar trying to get through French passport control at the moment. So we might see Gregoire's name sort of dropping down that list as the day goes on. Then we'll have another quick break, quick chance to catch up with everybody. And then Boyan, also from Sofia, is going to talk about latency in cloud environments. So lots of different subjects, lots of interesting stuff all related to CloudStack. And then I believe we're going to have a quick drink here for a while, and then we're heading to a pub over the road, where the real work starts. And that's all compliments of Computer Centre. Thank you very much, guys. So this group is one of many. There's nothing formal about this group. This is not an official Apache group or anything. There was just a bunch of us who were doing stuff with CloudStack a few years ago, and we started holding meetup groups. We decided to call it the CloudStack European User Group because we started doing them in different countries. But the thing to understand, there's lots of groups similar to this dotted around the world. Lots of people doing informal stuff around Apache CloudStack. And those of you who have flown from somewhere else today, I know there's a lot of people have come in just for the day. You might find that there's a user group or some sort of meetup group near you. Okay? And the best place to go and find these is Google, to be frank. There's no sort of central repository. In terms of what's been going on with CloudStack in the last few months, very busy from a release viewpoint. I'm not going to go through a whole list of features. You can go and read the release notes. 4.11 is an LTS branch, so pretty much every other major release of CloudStack, as in, when I say major, as in the second notation, ends up becoming an LTS release. So 4.11 is an LTS branch. 4.11.2 was released, which basically as an LTS release is just a lot of issues fixed. 4.11.3 is in planning, again lots of issues, nothing particularly exciting. Right now 4.12, which we think of as a major release, is in voting in the Apache community. So you should see some release announcements about that in, I guess, a week, something like that, week 10 days. And 4.13 is already being talked about and considered ready to be the next major release. So a lot of activity going on in the development world. Quick show of hands. Who uses CloudMonkey? Okay. A I like to test it because pretty much if you run CloudStack, you use CloudMonkeys. The CLI tool that ships independently of CloudStack. And there's a guy we work with, Rohit. Rohit. This CloudMonkey was his idea all the year, and it's his baby. Other people work on it, but he's the guy who's really passionate around it. And Rohit's just released version 6. Actually, it's in voting at the moment, so it's not formally released through the Apache Software Foundation yet. Lots of new exciting features, interactive commands, auto-complete on the commands, lots of stuff to just sort of save you time at the command line. And something I think is actually quite important is finally we've got cross-platform support, so you can run it on Mac, you can run it on Windows. And actually we have a surprising number of organisations who are running CloudStack, but then their desktop environment is Windows. Andrea. Oh, you're putting your hand up. I thought you were wanting to get
one of these words.
Okay, some other news. Officially, the CloudStack community, as in the community that is part of the Apache Software Foundation, has what we call a VP or a chair of the project, and the existing VP has just retired. They do a 1-year cycle, and a new VP has been appointed. I cannot tell you who that new VP is yet, because that new VP hasn't been officially appointed by the board, and it has to go for a formal board process. But there is a photograph of Mike Tatowski, the old VP, and Paul Angus, who sat in this room, who may or may not be the new VP of CloudStack. Well done, Paul. Great. Good work. Give him a round of applause. He's not officially the VP yet. Bobby has to work.
Quick question, Giles. Am I next on the list?
That's you, my friend. Where was that taken?
Looks like Manny.
I don't know.
Canada.
Is it?
Looks like Manny.
Miami. Alright, just again, for those of you that aren't involved in the Apache project, I know a lot of you here are, just to give you an idea of the structure, the Apache Software Foundation is focused, these pyramids here are projects, and it has 400 different projects. You know, the original web server, we know about Hadoop, Cassandra, CloudStack, all these different projects doing completely different things, and they're all done within the governance model of the Apache Software Foundation. Now, the entire point is that a project is done from a viewpoint of everybody is on a level playing field. There is no actual formal hierarchy. Okay, so my vote as a contributor, okay, is as valid as whoever he may be's vote as the VP of the project. I can actually veto code going out the door. Okay, just as an average. Any of you could join the community tomorrow and veto code going out the door, because that's the way Apache's always worked. But from an organisational viewpoint, there is a little bit of structure. That after somebody's been a contributor for a while, they may get nominated to become a committer, they get the commit bits, and they commit code directly, in theory, without other people having to commit it on their behalf. There's a small group, the project management committee, which has the sort of oversight in terms of making sure that the project is healthy and committers are doing what they're meant to do and following the sort of rules. And then the person who sort of acts as the interface between that management committee and the board of the actual the legal foundation itself is the chair. So it's an honorary position, and that person is expected to be the interface between the project and the actual Apache Software Foundation. Okay, in terms of what's going on generally, this is just something interesting I picked up on. Those of you who have heard me talk before will know I have an unhealthy obsession with the fact that CloudStack has had perception issues over the last few years. And one of the big things that's damaged the perception of CloudStack is the fact it happened to be in the same space as this other very, very successful open source project, OpenStack, right? And some of the work that goes on, or has gone on in OpenStack in the last few years has been amazing. But from a technology viewpoint, there have always been two slightly different use cases. CloudStack is this sort of out-of-the-box, simple product that does 80% of what most people want in an IaaS world. OpenStack has always been more a toolkit for people to go and build things on top of. But I'd be lying to say that, you know, the success of OpenStack hasn't hampered CloudStack slightly in terms of the amount of attention it's taken over the years. I think we felt a bit frustrated by that. This is an article I was reading, Avia's Online Ramblings. This person is a committer in the OpenStack project. I think used to sit on the technical oversight committee. And go and read this, I'll put the link in the slide. Really, really fascinating article, which sort of summarised that the problem that OpenStack has had over the last few years has been too much hype, has been too many vendors involved. And this is what I've been saying from the other side. You know, in CloudStack, we're this relatively small community. The community is mainly user-driven. Most of the people in this room are from people using CloudStack, not from vendors trying to capitalise and commercialise on CloudStack. And because of that, we haven't received the press and the PR attention in the industry that we felt we needed. I've often in the past described CloudStack as the invisible man of cloud computing. It's this thing that's used by all these organisations, but you have to dig really hard to realise the sort of adoption levels it's got and the type of organisations who are using CloudStack. And that was a real quote. I mean, this is going back a few years. We're talking to an organisation, they're a broadcaster, and we suggested CloudStack as a solution to the problem they've got at the time, and their chief architect said, "What's CloudStack? I've never heard of that." Now, arguably, he hadn't really done much research at the time, but it receives no press attention. It receives very minimal market attention. We go back a few years, and this is from 2011. It's the Gartner hype curve. IaaS, cloud computing, was right up there. It was right at the height, and this is the period when CloudStack was in its sort of formative years, and OpenStack was in its formative years. And what ended up happening was that, there was a bit of a two-horse race, or the industry wanted it to be seen as a two-horse race, and everybody got behind OpenStack, okay? All of these vendors use OpenStack as a route to market, and that's what we found it really frustrating in the CloudStack world, because we didn't think that it should be a two-horse race. We didn't think that the use cases were the same. But with all of that, and that's what this article highlights, is that's caused one of the biggest problems in OpenStack, with the guys with the money and the influence, the telco industry, the hardware vendors, okay, they were at the other end of the spectrum, the people who just wanted to use it, and what they wanted from OpenStack was commercial routes to market for their related technology. They didn't want something that was necessarily easy to install, etc., etc., and that's caused this conflict. What's quite interesting now is a lot of people in the OpenStack community are now looking retrospectively and going, "Oh, we got that wrong, we screwed that up." The key point for me is the conversation, the hype curve has moved on. Yeah? This is relatively, I want to use the word legacy, that's all, I can't stand at this meetup and call it the word legacy, but this is relatively old technology in the grand scheme of things. We're now all talking about containers, we're now all talking about how we're going to orchestrate our containers. The world sort of moved on in terms of hype. Okay? And actually I see that as a good thing for CloudStack, because the hype moves on, the vendors from that previous logo move on, people start to make more sensible technical decisions about what they're going to do at the IaaS layer, instead of just following what's the perceived hype or the perceived thing at the time. Okay, and at the heart of that, if you look from an OpenStack perspective, their foundation, just highlighted some words there: promoting, ubiquitous, grow the ecosystem. That's what the OpenStack Foundation does. Okay? And to a certain extent, the Linux Foundation is like that. They are a very commercially minded open source foundation. Apache, which is a foundation we all know and we all sort of love to a certain extent, in summary, the mission is to give away software for the public good. That's it. That's the only mission. There's nothing about developing markets, ubiquitous, or anything like that. It's like, go build some software and give it to people. That's all we want you to do. Okay? So, because of that, that sort of partly contributes to why we've had this sort of this perception problem over the last few years. From my perspective today, certainly in the last 12 months and looking forward out 12, 24 months, using Gartner's words, CloudStack's in that plateau at the end. The hype's all gone. People are now using this to deliver value to their organisations. You'll hear some of those stories today. We're seeing adoption remains high. I think it was the last meetup or the one before, we were talking about the downloads we were getting from the CloudStack download site, sitting at 10,000 a month unique IPs. A lot of people are downloading and installing this software. we see a lot of organisations, you'll hear from them, some of them today, who are adopting this software and doing exciting things with it. So everything's good. Development's healthy. You'll hear from Bob, he's going to do his talk in a minute about a lot of the work that's going on in terms of new feature sets and things. Community's certainly healthy, but we've still got this slight perception problem. Okay? And that's why it's good to see so many new faces here today. I have shown this slide before, but this is an appeal from me. The big thing we haven't got with CloudStack is enough users. And when I say users, I'm talking user organisations putting their hands up and saying, we use this thing, it delivers value for us, we think it's great, okay, and telling the world. And I'm talking here about case studies, I'm talking about a blog from a corporate organisation saying, yeah, we like this thing, even a technical blog, here's the problems we had, etc. Getting the message to the outside world that serious organisations are using CloudStack. And the issue we have, I mean, I know because I'm commercially involved with CloudStack, is talk to people about CloudStack. Oh, I don't know, anybody's adopting it. Are you sure it's healthy and what have you? And then eventually they'll get around to deploying it. We then say, look, can you come and talk about that? Can you maybe do something with the Apache Software Foundation? Say you're using it. Oh, it's all a bit difficult, and I don't know if our marketing people want to do that. As an appeal for me, it's pretty essential. It's the only missing bit we have for the health of this project is getting that word out a little bit. So any of you users here, please see if you could do something like that within your organisation. Okay, upcoming events. The next one of these is going to be in Sofia on June the 13th. Anybody fancy a nice few days in Bulgaria? We're going out there. The next one in London will be the autumn meetup, which normally would be in September, but it clashes with the main CloudStack conference, which I'll talk about in a second. So I think it's looking like it's going to be October, and the venue's TBC on that one. In terms of conferences, so once or twice a year we have a global CloudStack conference, which is this and all of those other groups around the world and the community getting together properly. It's a much bigger event. There is a relatively small version, a one-day version of that happening in Brazil, April 26th, and I guess it's probably short notice for anybody here to get on a plane to Brazil in just over a month's time. Our focus is going on the conference in Las Vegas, which is in September the 19th to the 23rd. The CFP for that is open, so anybody thinking you may be interested in going, we rely on people from the community, users of CloudStack, to come along to submit talks, to share your story, share your problems. Okay, so the call for participation: submit a paper, submit a talk. You get a free conference ticket if you talk. Okay, and there is travel subsistence available for anybody who wants to do it individually of their company. Andrew, a question?
Sorry to interrupt you. On the previous slide, did I see correctly 19th to 23rd? Because I do have this 9 to 14th.
Uh-oh. It's at some point in September.
Oh.
It may end in a 9, it may end in a 3, and by the end of the day I will confirm what that day in September is.
Well, I have
Those days, you could probably look it up if you go to...
9:13.
No, it's what?
9:13.
9:13, thank you, Bobby. That was just a typo for a minute. Okay, so the way that works, we have tracks, we have lots and lots of talks, lots of people who are working on different engineering problems, lots of users coming to talk about things. We also have a whole day hackathon, which is a whole bunch of engineers solving problems. And what was really interesting, last year we were in Montreal for the CloudStack conference, is we had some people from some user organisations in Japan turned up and literally pitched up at the hackathon. Nobody met these guys before, and they said, hey, we need to overcome some of these problems, and ended up working with a load of the CloudStack engineers and developers to overcome some of their problems. It's a great environment for learning, sharing ideas, gaining insights to what other users are doing, and if nothing else, you can come and play poker or whatever you want to do, because it's Las Vegas for a few days. Okay, that's everything I'm going to ramble about today. So our next speaker, is Mike, who's going to tell us about Ticketmaster's road to CloudStack.